The mystery continues in today's episode. Keep watching to find out about how famous massacres happened, who the Candyman is, why a person goes to great lengths to threaten a reporter on live TV, and many more. Ever seen an asteroid enter the Earth's atmosphere and move across the sky? There is just something always beautifully mysterious about it. Perhaps it's because no one can never be sure of the havoc its landing might cause.
These are videos humans were never meant to see, part 13.
Okay, so we all know what an asteroid is. But have you ever seen an asteroid entering Earth's atmosphere? If not, you're about to find out. This asteroid named SAR 2667 flew over northern France, causing a very beautiful sight in the sky.
Why no one ever found Joyce Vincent's body in her apartment for 3 years, and what must have happened to her body, and some of these other unsettling facts will surely spook you out.
These are some extremely unsettling facts, and I found all these on Reddit. Number 1 is the tragic story of Joyce Vincent. Joyce Vincent was a normal person like anybody else who lived in an apartment by herself until she tragically passed away in 2003. Joyce's body would remain in her apartment for 3 years, and the only reason the police found her was because a cop was in the building and noticed a foul stench coming out of her room. Number 2. Tumors. It's the last thing you want to hear in a doctor's office, and in general, it's just bad. But this is gonna make it worse. It's been documented for a lot of people that have had tumors removed, that they have had teeth, hair, and even eyes. And finally, body balloons. If your body is left uncured or untouched for a long enough period of time after you have passed away, the gases within your stomach will begin to swell. And one day, eventually, they will pop. Kinda makes you wonder what happened to Joyce in her apartment. Okay, I'm done, because these ones were grossing me out, but I guess that's why.
Need more unsettling facts? Here are some other ones. What happens if your head gets cut off? You think public toilets carry a lot of bacteria. What if we told you of an item you are holding right this minute that contains thrice as much bacteria? What is the horned lizard's weird defense mechanism?
These are some extremely unsettling facts, and I found all of these on Reddit. Number 1, don't lose your head. Now I have 2 million followers, so odds are one of you are gonna get your head cut off. But did you know it's possible for a human to stay conscious with their head cut off for up to 20 seconds? Number 2, your cell phone. Now public toilets are infamous for being disgusting bacteria-filled places. But did you know that your cell phone actually carries 10 times the bacteria of a public toilet? And to add insult to injury, it's been estimated that your kitchen sink could actually carry 20 times the bacteria of a public toilet. So yeah, just think about that. And finally, the horned lizard. This is a horned lizard. I mean, it's kind of cute in its own way, right? Well, horned lizards have the most disturbing defense mechanism I have ever seen in my life. When a horned lizard feels threatened, they will squirt blood out of their eyes towards their enemies. And that fact to me has cemented the horned lizard as the hardest animal in the animal kingdom. Hearing those was kind of scary, but pretty cool at the same time, but that's why...
This is the popular story of the not-so-famous serial killer who was dubbed the Candyman. Well, he was quite amateur in his attempt because his serial killer story was an op to cover the real truth, that he wanted to murder his son.
The Pixie Stick Killer, the Candyman, the man who killed Halloween, all nicknames for Ronald Clark O'Brien, born 1944 in Texas, where he would live all his life. By 1974, Ronald would have a wife and 2 kids, aged 8 and 5, along with a good job as an optician. During Halloween, he allowed his 2 kids to go one town over to Pasadena, seeing as it had twice the population as the town they live in, and stood within city limits, so it was really only a few blocks away. After a night of fun, Ronald let his kids have one more piece of candy before bed. Timothy, his 8-year-old son, chose a pixie stick, but upon ingesting it, he realized the candy wasn't sweet like usual, but it was bitter, and actually burned. Even after his dad gave him a drink to wash the taste out of his mouth, the burning sensation traveled from his tongue to his stomach and intensified. Feeling this pain, he went to the bathroom where he threw up and eventually passed out and started convulsing. All this, including his death shortly after, happened within just a few minutes, rendering the call for the ambulance useless. After tests were run, it was revealed that there was enough cyanide to kill 4 grown adults in the pixie sticks he had consumed. The news was released, and people from all over Texas started sending in their pixie sticks to get tested. Only 4 more laced with cyanide were found. 1 by the 5-year-old sister, and 3 from the people that Ronald had went with trick-or-treating. Luckily, Ronald knew who passed out the deadly pixie sticks, a random house on the street that they were on that seemed to line up perfectly. Only, the single occupant of the house was caught on camera at work all day and all night, so there was no way candy had came from that house. After that suspicious incident, the police started to secretly investigate Ronald himself. If getting in fights, stealing from work, and being nearly $150,000 in debt weren't suspicious enough for a guy with a so-called perfect life, then the $50,000 life insurance policy it took out on Timothy before he died sure was. With the mortality rate of a child in perfect health being so low, and the poor rate of return, paired with the kid's full life in front of him, it was not common, and is still not a common occurrence for kids to have a life insurance policy. And what makes it worse, less than 13 hours after the death of Timothy, Ronald was on the line trying to collect a life insurance check. Though not incriminating evidence, the visitation to the chemical warehouse in search of cyanide, asking an exterminator how much cyanide can kill a person, and the night Timothy picked his last piece of candy out, his mother said he wanted a lollipop, but Ronald insisted he have a pixie stick instead. We're all pretty incriminating. A knife was even found in the house with the sugar candy residue, the one that was used to replace the candy with the poison. With all of this evidence, on November 5th, 1974, not even a full week after Timothy's death, Ronald was arrested for the murder of his son. He was sentenced to death, and even the death row inmates hated him. 10 years later, that death sentence was carried out, and he passed via lethal injection.
The Jonestown massacres saw about 1,000 people killed by cyanide poisoning, with over 300 of them being children. James Jones, the murderer in this story, gives his alleged followers a mixture containing poison after making them believe that this was their ticket to another planet. Sadly, he doesn't live to face justice.
The Jonestown Massacre. Born May 13, 1931, now a well-known cult leader and mass murderer, Jim Jones grew up in lower-class Indiana. As a child, his mother would constantly berate him with visions she had while she was pregnant with him, certain that he would one day grow up to be a prominent religious figure. So it's no surprise that his friends described him as highly odd, with an extreme interest in religion and death. His first job would be working at a hospital, where his co-workers noticed he, unlike the other workers, had no difficulty working with dead bodies. In 1955, he went on to work for a church he called the People's Temple, where he was loved, but couldn't stay long because he was convinced the government was after him, and that they actually had a plan to bomb the church, so he moved to Brazil for a while. When he came back, the People's Temple sort of dwindled in numbers. He went on to explain the bombing story, and hundreds of people believed him. They were so convinced the government was about to bomb them that they had to pack up and move. The headquarters of the new People's Temple would be in San Francisco, California, which they established in 1965, where Jim would go on to take advantage of people in need, and disguise his plan of manipulating people under left-wing politics. From 1965 to 1973, he went from 150 members to over 3,000 members, and he actually became quite famous, known by celebrities, politicians, and even held in high regards by other religious figures. He not only mastered the art of public speaking, but became a master manipulator, able to convince people of nearly anything, including his own wife, believing Jim must sleep around with as many partners as he could, so he could keep his powers, though she may have been the only person to know the real him. As he wore a mask of lies at all times, his congregation had been convinced he was a god, and had to be worshipped, yet Jim told his wife in private that he was an atheist. They all knew the fact that Jim had to wear sunglasses at all times, as if he took them off, the glare of his unshielded eyes could accidentally kill. Yet he was just covering up to hide the red eyes he developed from years of using illicit substances. People started to catch on that this guy was not good, and in fear of his congregation finding out, in 1977, he moved them to Guyana, a place he humbly named after himself, Jonestown, where he continued to manipulate, drug, and borderline torture his members, sometimes holding drinking the flavor red practices that he would say may or may not be poison, to see how they reacted. This commotion gained notice from the US government. Representative Leo Ryan went to investigate the conditions of Jonestown, where he found numerous human rights abuse cases. 14 members even secretly explaining they wanted out to him. After a short time, the members and Leo left to the airport to get out, but what they didn't know was a member was secretly lying and telling Jim everything. At the airport, Jonestown members arrived with guns and started firing. They took the life of Leo, one Jonestown member, and 3 members of the media. And with the plan set in motion, Jim gathered everyone in Jonestown and began the flavored drinking event. Only this time, they were laced with cyanide, a chemical once ingested causes respiratory failure, coma, and eventually death. Jim had told them consuming this mixture would send them to live on another planet, where Jim would be the leader. Jim's armed guards blocked all exits. Children were forced to drink first, knowing once the parents see their kids dead, there would be no reason to live. 909 members of the People's Temple of Jonestown would drink the flavored mixture and die, including 304 children. Jim Jones would talk and oversee most of what happened, but later died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
What should have been a normal day for this reporter ended up being one he would remember for a long time. A man entered the studio with a gun and asked the reporter to read some things he had earlier documented.
Here's some of the scariest things that have happened on live TV. On August 19, 1987, a broadcast from the KNBC studios in Burbank, California was taking place. Everything was going as planned, that was until a special guest entered the room.
Now, one of the nicest things about shopping by mail order... Pardon me? What is this?
A man named Gary Stolman entered the room brandishing a firearm which has been blurred to accommodate TikTok's guidelines. He managed to gain access to the studio by claiming to be a guest of one of the station workers. He pointed the firearm at KNBC journalist David Horowitz and ordered him to read a written statement.
When I began receiving disturbing calls from my parents, which led me to believe that something terrible was going on.
This statement, prepared by Stolman himself, claimed that his father Max, who worked as the KNBC pharmacist reporter, was, quote, not his biological father, but a clone created by the CIA and alien forces. Despite Horowitz remaining calm, he later stated that he was frightened but remained calm so the situation did not get worse. After the statement was finished, Stolman placed the weapon on the desk and admitted it was an unloaded BB gun after being taken into custody.
Going on sightseeing should be fun, right? But when an eruption of a volcano, usually known to be dormant, takes place, there's nowhere these 47 sightseers could run to, and the fun naturally turned to horror and one of the worst days ever.
Videos that have disturbing backstories. In this footage it shows the White Island Volcano Tour group on the 9th of December, 2019, completely unaware that in just a few minutes the volcano was going to erupt. 47 people were on the tour on the volcano at the time of the eruption, and 22 of those 47 unfortunately lost their lives that day. This would have been truly one of the scariest and most terrifying experiences that anyone could possibly go through. Rest in peace to those who lost their lives.
This story makes a foolproof testament to the existence of ghosts in our everyday life. How? Watch this clip to find out how a boy presumed dead found a way to talk to another who never knew about his existence at the hospital where they were both treated.
I swear the creepiest stuff always happens in hospitals. So Katrina was a nurse in the pediatric oncology part of the hospital, and she was looking after this one little boy that was in rough shape. It seemed like his treatments weren't working anymore, but despite all this, he stayed in pretty good spirits. And he would always wear his Spider-Man costume. Like every day, always in the Spider-Man costume. Sadly, the little boy eventually passed away from his cancer. But then, a few months later, a teen boy gets admitted down the hall. And this was after the little boy had already passed away, so there was no overlap between the two. This boy was also in pretty rough shape and his treatments weren't working anymore. But then one night, a nurse hears him talking to someone inside of his room, but there's no one there. So the nurse goes in to see who he's talking to, and she can't believe what he says. The teen said he just saw a little boy dressed as Spider-Man in his room talking to him. And this little boy was telling him all about Marvel and all about how much he loves Spider-Man. The teen boy ended up passing away a few weeks later, but that story always stuck with the nurses.
Which of these did you find most intriguing? Let us know in the comments section.